Welcome back to Building CareCo, where I sit with my dear co-founder and CTO, Shlomo Razov, and we talk once a week. Wins, losses, successes, failures. Been a lot of fun. Building CareCo. Here we are, episode 14 or 15. Okay. All right. We finished out the month of April. We just passed 15,000 patients. I expect us to be at about 25,000 in May, so it could hold me to that at the end of the month. We also, I feel like, are entering chapter 3 in the story of CareCo, which is really fun. Chapter 1 was kind of the ideation stage. Took a while, probably about a year, from like thinking about it to creating like an MVP. You were still at your old job. You were working nights and weekends to try to like, prove this thing out. That was obviously a very exciting time because it's like, you're coming up with new ideas and new things and the product. And then there was chapter 2, which I would say started in November of last year when we essentially came out of stealth.
Started getting real customers.
We announced our partnership with ThoroughCare. We started onboarding some of their clients, some external clients, and building out the phone system was kind of new. There was a lot of, it took a while to get stable as we brought people on and we found the different gaps and different things. Found out that that's a lot more complex than, I don't know, we anticipated, because I don't know if we necessarily went in with any very specific, expectation. And now starting April, well, let's say starting May, thank God we have a probably 97% stable experience from our core features. We have closed pretty much all the use case gaps. So people that are with ThoroughCare, people that come out without ThoroughCare, how do they get patients in? Like all the little pieces of the puzzle. Also it's very interesting when you build, it's actually very interesting. One of the most important things that we've done, and something that I suggest to pretty much any tech founder, is to basically go find a end user and literally give that company or person, I would even say, equity in the company. Like that's how important I would say it is, because then you're able to build something that's exactly for the right person instead of building in a bubble, right? Which a lot of people do. But the flip side to that is sometimes, which we've experienced, sometimes you end up building your processes and the details for that specific person's workflow.
Right.
And they're not everyone's workflow, even in that same exact space. And it could be small little nuances, but it makes a difference. So examples of that would be like, we figured, okay, so if you're a client of ThoroughCare's, just to take a step back, if you're a client of ThoroughCare's, ThoroughCare basically gives you the ability to have users in their system. You can load patients. The patients typically, the way that ThoroughCare is built is that the patients belong to a practice. And then the practice has users assigned to the practice. Right. And that makes sense, right? And so that's how we built CareCo as well, where you have patients, the patients are assigned to a practice and the practice has users. And so when we built our phone system, it was actually very convenient for users because now everything matches up. So I start practice A in ThoroughCare, that comes over to CareCo, and then practice A has patients and then also has users. And the reason why that's important is because if I want to call a patient that belongs to practice A, I already know what phone number to call out of automatically. Well, CareCo means CareCo knows automatically what phone number to call out. It just makes it very, very convenient. But then we found, as we're bringing on, some very large clients, that they didn't do it that way. And they used the same framework of ThoroughCare, but they just never broke it up into different practices for different reasons, because the way that their business runs is different. So they'll have like 2 practices, and that practice has tons of patients that are calling out of, let's say, like we have one that they call out of all 50 states. So they call patients out of a state and they have a different number for every single state, but all those patients are under one quote unquote practice. So then we had to like decouple the phone from assigning the patients to the practice, whatever. Anyway, so that's just an example, but you find as you build, you find these different nuances and workflows and you have to build accordingly.
Yeah. It's not fundamental, but right. It's details that we adjust, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we adjusted and I mean that none of those were very heavy lifts, but it's just examples how like as you, once you like, as you're building to kind of critical mass, you're going to find these little things that have to be, these holes that have to be plugged. And coming back to my point, I feel like now we're entering chapter 3, which is like the foundation is really, really strong. The experience is there. We have a really good onboarding process, which seems to be very successful, which is really cool. So folks see CareCo, they reach out, we put them on a demo. They move pretty much 100% from demo to trial. We give them a 1-week free trial. And then from a trial, they pretty much all convert. So that's been pretty cool. And now I feel like we're entering like chapter 3 of the story where we're kind of building up, scaling. We just announced our partnership with HELIOS platform, which is owned by a company called Virtual Health. They have a parent company called Elegant Health. So that's exciting because they speak to 14 million patients a month. And doesn't mean that they necessarily have access to CareCo today, but CareCo is integrated. So now we can go to their clients and help them get access to CareCo from within the HELIOS platform that they're already using. So that's exciting. So yeah, it's been fun. How do you feel a lot of that is on the tech side, like the different levels. How do you feel as this is like scaling, getting more stable and bigger and more real? And
Yeah, I feel there's different phases, but to me, generally, it just seems like one big hill without necessarily chapters.
Yeah.
But you always look back and you're like, oh wow, we passed that. Look how high we are. So it's a good. There's two sides to it, obviously, when you're going up a hill, an endless hill. But yeah, I feel like we're learning. There are some challenges that we had, but once you learn how to kind of systematize it and handle it properly, like even the support side with all the issues with the phone, I mean, we don't necessarily right now have a support person to help them. I mean, you're doing most of the client-facing stuff, but it's clear what the process is. Like there's the messages come in, someone needs to see, is there basic stuff that we can help them with? Can we create automated workflows that help them triage it themselves before even we need to respond to them? Okay, is this unique? Now let's put it in a task for the developers to look at, engineers to look at, and then if it's something that seems critical or something that either is critical to one person or is critical because it affects a lot of people, then bubble it up. So I think the clarity around how do we handle that is good, because then that gives us a framework, and once you have a framework, you can scale, because you can scale your you can scale your resources in that framework, and you know how to handle it instead of being like so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of things we figured out in that sense of like, okay, here's a proper way to do this.
Yeah.
So we're kind of, I think we're kind of like tightening up on all areas and getting ready for scale. And like you're saying, we had enough. I think we talked about this last podcast. Like we have enough divergent clients, enough to give us kind of the sense of like, okay, what do we need generally here to support? What does stability look like?
Yep.
And yeah, so this is definitely a new phase. I think we're ready to scale, and we're also building a lot of stuff, a lot of new features.
Yeah,
which is exciting.
Yeah, and I will say, like, as the person who's still in, so we said last time, tried that thing in India, didn't really work out, and now I'm looking at a couple different areas. I'm actually looking at Colombia, I'm looking at South Africa, and then happened to be this week, this girl reaches out to me, like trying to sell me on some marketing service, and it was a little unclear what she wanted. I wasn't sure if it was an interview, whatever. So I said, I'll give her 15 minutes. So I gave her a 15-minute calendar link, and she jumps on and she's trying to sell me this thing. And I was like, listen, she's like, we can help you with your marketing. I was like, I don't know if you took the 2 minutes to go look at our
website
page, but I'm not exactly hiding under a rock media-wise. We have a tremendous head of content named Shlomo Wolf, and he puts out just phenomenal
and your
content.
LinkedIn account. And
just like look at what we're doing. We've got 2 podcasts, we've got YouTube channel, look at our feature videos, look at the stuff we put out. Like we're quite past that. It's funny because her website was crap. But I started talking to her and I said, where are you from? She said, I'm from Kenya. And I was like, shoot, flawless English. Like you would think one of these people that say they're from Kenya and they moved to the US when they were like 6 months old. But no, she lived in Kenya her whole life. She lives in Kenya currently. She went to private school in Kenya that spoke English. And then she went to school in the UK. And so she like not just spoke English, like culture and tone, and it was like perfect. So I said, listen.
So you're like, 1 second, I'm not necessarily going to buy from you, but maybe I have something to sell you.
Yeah, I was like, listen, I'm like, how long? I'm like, sounds like you're in a course, first of all. Sounds like someone sold you a course to teach you how to get lists of CEOs and send them emails and try to sell them stuff. So I'm like, what course are you in, first of all? Like, second of all, how long have you been doing this? Do you have any clients? And I'm like, listen, I think you should come work for me. I'm looking for this role. I need somebody that can be customer facing, someone that can jump on video calls, someone that is helpful, has common sense. And outside of that, you could, first of all, you can end up building out a team locally in Kenya, like, as we build out that team, and you could basically oversee the whole thing. And second of all, if the things that you enjoy are marketing, I have a lot better things that you could do marketing wise under our current head of marketing than, reaching out to people and trying to get them to, like, she like interviews them and then gives you back a white paper on yourself that you can publish. I'm like,
so how does she take it? Interested?
So I think she's still like young enough and I think new enough at the marketing thing that I think she's still like heart set on it. And, so it's more of a dream right now and it's hard to kind of like pop that. But she did promise me that she would find me some people in Kenya that could fit the role. So we'll see where that goes. But that could be an interesting option as well. But anyway, coming back to support, but so I'm basically still primarily on support now and it's very manageable. I mean, there are no critical issues.
That's good. I mean, we're in a space that we learned over time as we got into the phone system. This is a hole we dug, and the deeper we got, the more it was like, okay, we already got so far.
Yeah.
But where's the light at the end of this tunnel? And it was always like, should we go back? Should we continue? Because definitely the more we're doing this, the more we realize, oh my God, the phone system is huge. It's not just a side, nice, cute little thing. This is going to differentiate us. This allows us to be a communication platform, a one-stop shop. You don't need anything else. You just come into CareCo. The user experience is amazing because everything is right there, catered for your use case, exactly on the spot. And the fact that it's hard to do phone systems is to our advantage because if we overcome that, that means we're really offering something special here that other people that can't necessarily offer. And it's also a competitor, like kind of barrier for competitors. So we had that, and I feel like the more where was I getting at?
Saying about support.
Yeah. So
critical. You were saying that we learned about critical issues because
there aren't
any critical issues.
Right. Oh, so I was going to say that relatively in our space we have a lot more issues than a typical CRUD app that just does stuff. I mean, in that sense, I think we would have very, very little issues in terms of like something's broken, more of like behavioral UX kind of problems, this scenario, that scenario. We didn't think of edge cases, but I think a lot of our issues is the fact that you have a phone system. Phone systems are very complex by nature. There's a lot of networks that connect to.
Isn't that crazy how archaic the telephony core technology seems now that like we're looking at it? The amount of the amount of areas for failure when you make a phone call is insane.
Right.
It's literally crazy. Like sometimes it feels like they're still running a cup with a string somewhere.
No, there's analog, right?
There's, you know what I mean? Like it's nuts.
Right. Because it's a very old system, an old network that they're trying to kind of work with in the digital space, but converting the telephony layer and the digital is, I think ultimately probably everything is going to become VoIP and it's not going to be these phone number thingies. I mean, just think about also from an internet perspective, from a data, like, you have satellites. Yeah, you can reach any place in the world. Also from a security perspective, like you want a verified number. You don't want like a number that comes in and the carrier can flag it as potential spam,
right.
So I think, I don't know, that's my prediction that over time.
Second, can you dig into that a little bit? So what are the differences between, because I thought we are VoIP. Are we not VoIP?
On our end, we're VoIP, but we're reaching out to the PSTN, to like people that may be on a regular phone line, on a landline, they may be on a cell phone. The cell phone carriers may be in some layers, they do.
You're saying versus a smartphone, for example, WhatsApp calling from a person that's fully digital. You're never going to have, basically you have one option. You either have good internet or bad internet. That's the only thing that'll matter to your call.
Exactly.
Versus your standard landline or cell phone that's using, what's the other one called? What's like core telephony tech called?
Like analog, I don't know the right term, maybe PSTN, public.
So there, it's so. Do you have any inkling into like how that works?
There's a lot of there's a lot of analog parts to it, which means analog means it's not digital. Digital is much more reliable because digital also sends you confirmations, everything's okay. It could, if the packet gets lost, if a piece of data gets lost, you can choose, depends on what protocol you're using. You can always resend that. There's a lot more
and it's so much more secure, like you said.
So much more accurate. And like think about like, back in the day you had a video, VHS, you pop it in. I don't know if it was before your days?
No, we had VHS.
Okay, so at some point like the quality started getting grainier and older, and like even audio recordings. But a digital file, it's always, in 100 years, it's always going to do the same thing, right? Even though on the disk that it's stored, it may start getting distorted.
Right.
But the 0 and 1 system is very black and white.
About some guy that like has a company, it's just him, and he's like the biggest person in the space. He basically came up with the technology that essentially, when you're trying to log in to anything, it sends a thing. It's basically a device fingerprint. You weren't telling me this?
No, I don't remember.
Somebody was telling me this, that they met some guy.
Maybe my memory is getting.
The whole company is just him. He came up with this tech that basically is device fingerprinting. So if I'm trying to log in with a code, with a security code, right? It basically pings my phone and knows if the device that's logging in is the same exact device that got the code or not, which makes it basically 100% secure. I mean, 99.9% secure.
Assuming your phone is in your hand, right?
Right. Meaning that allows that, like, even if somebody else gets a hold of your code in some scam place, and
right, but your phone, it's still a single factor because your phone has access to everything, right? Multi-factor means that you're not being more lenient. You're not adding more entry points, but you're adding another point that you have to pass. So if you have to have also your password that you remember in your head, and it's not in your device, and also you have to have your physical device. So that's multi-factor.
Right. So I think this is like even in that scenario, but when you're putting in the code in multi-factor, so now I have to put in a code. The code comes to my phone. I put it in. It basically knows that the same device that the code was sent to is the same device that's inputting the code. So
right, but if someone stole your device, if there's just one incident when someone stole your device, he'll be able to do that whole flow, right? So potentially that's a single factor. So it's not, I don't know, unless there's some nuance that I'm not picking up.
Yeah, maybe I'm not remembering all the details, but the point is that like he basically came up and patented the tech, and like every bank and every financial institution basically uses this technology.
The point of multi-factor is basically that someone wants to steal, they'll have to steal two things from you, which each one is a challenge on its own. They have to get your phone and somehow your password that's in your head or that's stored in some other place, which if your phone has access to that other place, then
they have to cut off your thumb,
it's ultimately
fingerprint. Like in all the
but yeah, telephone space is very complex. I mean, we're using a service that kind of handles most of the complexity, but still a lot of it they relay back to us. It's like, oh, you know, the carrier is rejecting this and this and that. There's AT&T is doing X. I mean, they just need to report to us as what they can. They can't change the system but so we still need to figure out, okay, what's the user experience in this scenario? How to relay that information back. So we still get a lot of the brunt, you know, the complexities back to our app, and that creates, you know, a lot of
And
issues.
that's the bigger problem. When you pull out your phone, and this happens to me all the time, when you pull out your phone and I try to call you, right? And it doesn't even ring and it goes straight to voicemail. I make an assumption that my connection is bad or your connection is bad, and it's not my phone or my phone app, because why would my phone app not work, right? But when users are on CareCo, which is a new app, and there are some other things that we've had to work out, other bugs, so now everything feels like it might be a CareCo bug. And
so that's why we want to. That's why we have planned for next week to add when you call and it hangs right away up. If we have information about why it hung up, let's say if it can't find the device like in the network, if the number is gone or it was rejected, we'll show it. We'll show a message to the user like it was rejected or busy or whatever the code. If we get a code back from the terminating carrier, then we'll be able to show it and make it so like you're saying, instead of people think, oh, CareCo is broken, oh, you know, the number doesn't exist. Let me go find out.
And I just had that on Friday. Somebody sent me 2 numbers and they were like, I think CareCo's, I don't know, I can't make calls. And then she used another phone system to try it and it also failed. But there, I think, was a little more clear. But that possibly, but either way, then the assumption was, oh, it's not CareCo. It's just
exactly. And it was not found. The number was not found. I remember that.
Yeah, it was a bad number. She's like, oh, okay, fine. It's a bad number. What were you going to say?
Patent, the printing, according to online, was invented by multiple people, multiple companies.
Oh, yeah? Okay, so whatever. But this guy basically is just sitting there and he whatever. It's like a one-person company, and he just has a bunch of clients doing this tech and whatever. But anyway, I
also wanted to talk about like just it came clear to me like it's interesting because a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with, we don't have experience, right? I mean, if I've experience with technology, you have experience with care coordination, so we come from the areas. But I never built a scalable app at this level, a phone system. You never built a software, a company that caters for many care coordination companies, right? We're discovering a lot of nuance. Shlomo has a lot of experience marketing, but I'm assuming you're doing a lot of stuff that you didn't do in the past. So in a way, I think it's interesting to talk about this because I see it as a massive benefit because we're just like your whole exploration about customer service, right? The first thing that triggers me is like people that are very experienced. I'm like, oh, this guy's like he's an amateur. Like this is how you do it. This is the playbook, right? And then it could be we're going to find our way to there. Also with what I'm doing, it could be in a year or two, it's going to be so obvious that I'm following a certain playbook that's obvious that everybody that did this in the past. But I feel there's something beautiful of not doing that because first of all, everything is first of all, you learn, you grow. So that's an incredible experience as long as you don't fail. But also we're doing things that actually makes sense and not because this is how it's done. I think
All
like
first principles, yeah.
exactly. So when you do that, you find yourself in the best place because then sometimes you're like, oh, 1 second, this process is not even needed.
Right.
Like people that come with a lot of experience, a lot of times they're very, the way they've seen something done, it works against them also. So
Right.
I think that's nice that we're like, we're discovering, oh, this is how it's done. And then at some point we'll be like, oh yeah, this is how everybody does it.
Yeah. It's something I had to do early on with Previva also. That basically I came into processes. So when I took over Previva, I had 2 clients, a couple hundred patients, and it was impossible to scale because all the internal processes were completely broken. But these were the processes. This is what was being done. And what I was taught to do by Israel and whatever was basically like question everything, but also be open to the fact that you might discover that the original thing that you were questioning was the correct answer. Like that is also a very possible outcome, but you still have to question everything. And when you question things, you give yourself the freedom to like fail at finding answers, you know, like maybe this is not the right way to do it. Maybe let's try this. Maybe let's try that. And maybe you'll fail at 3 different things and you'll come back to the original thing. But more often than not, you're not, and you're going to discover something that's a lot more efficient. And that's basically what happened there, where I was like, okay, this, like as an example, what this guy would do was he would log into every EHR every day, go through the schedule of that day, open up every single patient that was coming in, look at their chart, see if they were eligible for the program, which requires looking at diagnosis codes and insurance. Then if they were eligible, he would open up a spreadsheet, an Excel sheet, and search for that patient's EHR ID to see if the patient was on the spreadsheet, which meant that the patient was already on service. Then, if the patient was not on service, he would leave a note in the EHR for the person at the front desk to hopefully remember to talk to the patient about the program. Every patient, every day. So that took him all day to do for each day.
This was a guy that worked at Previva before
This was the guy
you
that
joined?
started. Yeah, started.
Okay.
So it took him all day, every day to do that. And so I didn't know what an EHR was. I didn't know anything. But all I knew was like it was 2019 and there was definitely a better way to do that. And so within like 2 weeks, I had figured out how to run reports for the week ahead to see every patient that was going to come on, be able to export that into a CSV file. Then I would run I learned about VLOOKUPs and I was able to run a formula that would basically say, okay, look this against this sheet. And then within 3 hours, I was able to complete the work for the entire week, you know? So that exploration, that willing to be like, you know, and maybe I would have found out that that's the only option because you can't run CSV reports out of EHRs. I don't know. Maybe I would have found that out, but like, you know.
So you're able to get ahead of time, basically. So you're able to consolidate 1 day of work,
full week.
5 days
into
into
like 3 hours, you know? So yeah, that exploration I think is really important. Yeah. And even if you fail and you come back to the original thing, or you find like, oh, that's why the whole industry does it that way, that's fine. That's totally fine.
I think a lot of successful companies, you'll see that they do things differently than what you're supposed to do. And that's because, you know, every scenario has a different solution. And if you're just going to kind of, you know, bolt on whatever you learned in business school or whatever, it's always going to be, it may not be the right fit. So I think there's 2 sides to the coin, but I'm happy to be on this side because I feel like, you know, if something goes wrong, we'll say, okay, what's wrong and how do we fix it? As opposed to being like, no, this is the way. It's, you know, I'm blaming everything else. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm sure there's smart people that have a lot of experience and are very flexible and open-minded.
Right.
But it's fun, definitely fun to discover as long as we don't fail trying.
Yeah. It's funny because specifically when it comes to marketing, I think more often than not, the industry experts of all the big companies get nowhere. Yeah. Nowhere. Like, when's the last time you saw a corporate tea company that had a solid marketing strategy? I'm not talking about the Nikes and I'm not talking about like the flashy big brands. I'm talking about like whatever. We'll name names, but after we can talk about it.
That's a massive allegation. Like, not allegation. It's not, you're not saying someone did something wrong.
No, because
it's a massive
marketing by nature, content creation by nature is such a free flowing, consistently changing.
I'll rephrase as a bold statement, because I mean, all they have to do as in marketing is talk to the people that are relevant to their sales, right? So if you see their marketing, you don't feel like you connect to it. Is that like where you're saying, like that's where you feel like they're not on point?
I think that I think that corporatism and structure are directly in conflict with a with a successful marketing strategy because of what Shlomo just said, that like that marketing and content strategy by nature has to be very flexible and very nimble, and you're always have to be thinking out of the box, and that the landscape is constantly changing from the tools that you're working with to the things that are important to people. I mean, there's always going to be some core psychology behind sales, don't get me wrong, but then there's like, but the way that you express that and how you do it and what tools you're using and how you're connecting with folks, what platforms are you connecting with them on, how you're going about that is so ever changing. And so that
the iteration cycle,
you juxtapose that with like, we have our box, I have my SVP of marketing, and they basically do these 4 things.
And they hand it over.
We do X, and then this person, it's like.
But yeah, but that's true for both marketing and software development and everything, where when you're small and nimble, the iteration cycle is much quicker, because there's an idea, I create a small prototype, we give it to a customer, he's like, yeah, this is great, but I will just do that. In a week, we have like a solid, perfect thing. In a big company, there's a process. You have to get it approved to put it in the roadmap. You have to do an analysis of what's the ROI in such a project. Then it goes through a stage of designing, and you give it to a team, and they discuss internally. So you're talking like months. So there's an inherent inefficiency in large corporations, and I think that's this. And I think it's becoming more consequential and more of a penalty now that you have AI, because with AI, you can be a force multiplier and do so many things so much faster. Like if we look at some of the companies that we're working with, right? Like, do they have the ability to, like, we just did a ambient voice listener, right? In a few days, right? I mean, we have like most of the infrastructure in place, so it's not as if someone's building it from scratch. But still, to be able to do it in 5 days and have like a beautiful working product, like, who do you see is able to do that today? Like, right. The lack of processes is not just that we can work faster, it's also with AI, we can work way, way faster. So I think the penalty for being a big bureaucracy is actually going to hurt a lot more companies now, and you're going to have a lot of these disruptors like us coming into places and moving so fast.
Right.
I don't agree that people think, I've seen a lot of posts on internet lately, oh, look, I built on this, I built on that, in 5 minutes I built this whole app that does what the SaaS company does. We know, you've seen this, to build a prototype even that works for one customer, what I built in like 2 weeks that worked for Previva was quick. To scale that is a whole different animal.
Right.
And AI does not know how to scale applications. If you don't have a solid strategy and depth of understanding in what you're doing, you're not going to be able to scale anything. So there's nonsense when people are saying right now that SaaS is dead. It's not dead. I mean, it's dead because of another reason, not because people are vibe coding, but more of companies like us that are coming in and saying, we're going to remain so nimble and so small because each developer that has freedom, flexibility, and not constrained by bureaucracy is a force multiplier, because now he can work with AI and develop so much faster. That's a massive disruptor. So SaaS is dead from that perspective. It's not dead because some little girl sat in her house and vibe coded something that looks like he could do it. No. From there to a working, scalable, production-ready product, that's something that AI will not take you there.
Right, but is there something that tells you that fundamentally AI will not get there?
Ultimately,
or is this just step one?
Yeah. Right. No. So if you extrapolate how AI has been, and it's not necessarily correct to assume that you can extrapolate AI's progress, because there's so many different, AI needs to overcome so many new breakthroughs to be able to reach the point where it continues growing at the rate that it is. So it's not a linear concept. It's not like, you put more bricks and the building grows at a certain rate. It's AI, to get to that phase, needs to have more breakthroughs. But at the current breakthroughs that are happening, if you extrapolate and you say, based on the current, the path that we're taking, where are we going to be in 5 years? Absolutely, we're going to be there. Mark Zuckerberg and all these big CEOs are saying, oh, in a year, 2 years. The Anthropic guy said in 2 years, all code is going to be written by AI. I mean, maybe it's going to be written by AI because the engineers are looking and telling AI what to do, and they're reviewing it and changing it. Maybe that's what they mean. But replacing, engineers, I don't see that. Like, people that are doing real work, there's no evidence right now that we have that and that we're getting there. It's a bold statement to say, oh, in 2 years we're going to be there. I mean, do you really know? I don't know. Maybe, I'm sure they know more than me, because they have the researchers that are maybe, getting glimpses of possible breakthroughs that may happen in the next year or two and what they may mean. But right now we don't have it, but
right.
Probably.
You actually said something interesting on Friday, though. You told me that it feels like there was a giant improvement in at least the ability for AI to help somebody like you or somebody like our other engineers.
Yeah, absolutely. So until now, I would use AI a lot for basic, like no-brainer code, like front-end components, stuff that it's, once you give it your styles, you give it examples of your code, it can do a really good job at creating them. But when it comes to back-end logic complexities where like performance and nuance is very important, I wouldn't even bother with AI. I mean, I would use it as autocomplete, like, Copilot, for those who know what it is. Like, as you're writing, it kind of gives you the next few lines based on the context. And that was very helpful. But I would never go like to a cursor or to, or the equivalent of that and say, oh, build me this, because it would be totally off. And the time that it would possibly save me with a few lines would be countered by me trying to first figure out what it did and why I did it wrong, as opposed to thinking what's the right way to do it. So net, it wasn't worth it. At this point, I feel like in many cases, it's already net worth it. I kind of give it some sort of idea. I already strategize how I want to do it. I'm like, let's do it this way. What it spits out with like Gemini 2.5, experimental, pro experimental, and the like, maybe even 04 mini. I'm not sure about that, but those models are ready to a point where I'm saying, okay, I can make use of it even with complex stuff, but it's not writing it for me. And there's a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of nuance that need to be careful. So it's far from replacing anybody, but it's becoming a more powerful tool for sure. Yeah.
That's cool.
And it's good because it gives us a massive advantage.
Yeah.
Also, what I feel is like in these big companies, no one's forced, and I've been in bigger companies, no one's as an engineer, most people are skeptical. They like to do things on their own. At least the good ones, because they're very particular usually about how they do things. And the minute they try AI here, AI there, and they see it's not working, they're like, nah, I'm not going to trust it. They don't have a reason to use AI properly in coding. You have to be continuously giving it a chance, because the ratio of like, if it does work and the amount it's gonna benefit you is tremendous, that it's worth it to give it another chance. Maybe I prompted it wrong. Maybe the new model will be better. Some people just dismiss it and they just do the work the way they do. And they're in these big companies and their managers are looking at them and saying, okay, this guy's working well. This is what I've seen my whole life. This is the development pace. But in a startup like us, where we're like pressured, where I feel the pressure to get things out, you feel pressure to get marketing stuff out. I mean, we're all using AI out of necessity. And then we're like, oh my God, we can do this. And then we're working at 10 times the speed. And in these big corporations, no one's doing that. I mean, Shopify actually recently did a mandate, I think, because they're probably realizing this, that to force people to use AI has to be a mandate has to be like whatever it's called. The company has to make it an official thing where you have to try to use AI. This is not just a nice tool. This is gonna, if we don't hop on this train, if we don't use these efficiencies, we're gonna be left behind. And small startups like us are forced to do it. So we're moving super fast. And that's an interesting observation. I'm curious to see if a lot more companies how they're gonna figure out that, because it's really complex. You have a whole bureaucracy. Now you have to tell everybody, okay, move faster. And performance reviews have to now change. Performance review has to say, I need to compare it to the year before, but assume, let's say, a 2x improvement or a 10x improvement in certain areas. How do you know which areas need a 10x improvement, which areas not? Because some areas are very complex and AI cannot help you. Some areas are that obvious that AI can be a 40x improvement. So,
and that itself has to be on the performance report of like, are you using AI and how much, and show me that it's actually helping you. Because the problem with mandates is that mandates very often are inherently ineffective, because the famous story that is such a good story of like this. There was a town that was being settled in early America, let's say, whatever. So I think it's a made up story, but they had a massive problem with cobras. But there was king cobras. They would go around. They were killing people. Big problem. So the local government basically had a very simple thing. They made a mandate. They made a law. They basically put a bounty on cobras' heads. Anyone that brings in a dead king cobra gets $20. And it was working like magic. People were showing up every day with dozens of cobras and whatever. Till a month later, they found out that the whole town started breeding cobras.
Bringing it from other places.
No, they started breeding them.
Oh, breeding.
Them because they're like, $20 per head. So like you when you miss the underlying issue by trying to create a mandate, so like, if you say, okay, everyone has to use AI. Okay, I've done my 20 minutes with ChatGPT today, or okay, I've done this, I've done that. Like, you have to have structure around, like, I think you have to figure out how to like, what is the thing that makes, that you just said, just to unpack it a little bit, what is the thing that makes someone like you or someone like Menachem or someone like Shlomo or someone like me use AI? It's out of necessity, and it's out of, we're forced to have to be
we need to get
faster,
more,
quicker.
we need to get more things done than the time that we have.
Right. So there's an upward pressure from the bottom that forces out the result of using AI. Right. And so if that pressure is not there, then a CEO speaking at you and saying, okay, I want everyone to start using this, it's very important to me. What's the core fundamental cultural difference that's going to create that pressure?
It's a mindset. It's just a seed where he's saying, please start thinking AI first. Question every part of your job. You're right. But I think ultimately in companies where companies tend to be very reliant on performance and monitoring, on babysitting, on managers, right? I mean, I just see it as a big babysitting system, but maybe that's an oversimplification and not a justified way to say it. But like these big bureaucracies, they're going to need to have comps. They're going to have comparables. They have to now know, okay, what should I expect from a new thing? They don't have the numbers. AI is changing all the time. I don't know if anybody's officially sharing these numbers. So they're going to have a framework of saying, how do I do a performance review now? What should I expect of my engineer that's doing X, Y, Z to be if I know that he's using AI, and then I can expect him to do that. They don't have that. It's going to take years until you have that. And until then, these companies are going to be...
You know what the easiest way to do it is basically you have a corporate account with, let's say, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it is, and you have all your employees have to be on there. And then basically you could just...
Monitor?
There should be like we plan on doing this with our Care Coach concept, but basically there should be like a parent ChatGPT. And then, the same way you have like channels in your personal thing, then there should be the employee accounts, and the parent thing monitors the whole organization. And then you should be able to just go in and be like, okay, I'm doing the performance report for this person. Tell me, what did he use you for? And how much do you think, what efficiencies do you think he gained because of it? And just like ask it. And then if it's the tool that you interacted with then it should be able to just give it to you.
Right. But
there is no one-stop shop AI right now. So it could be that's not
right, but it's also hard to know, like, if an engineer didn't use AI, you have to know certain types of development, certain languages, certain very delicate things. It's absolutely, you don't want to touch AI. You don't want AI to write very complex, nuanced stuff that need a lot of attention, that have high consequences if they go wrong. So you have to also know that context. That's what I'm saying. It's not that straightforward. And by the way, that goes to another topic. I was thinking recently, like the big AI companies, I think if they can crack the enterprise corporate efficiency game with AI, I think everybody's trying to figure out. OpenAI is like, okay, we're sitting on these massive, brilliant things. It's not, on the one hand, the real value that's being unlocked in the entire economy, in the entire world, are companies like us. We're building an application on AI. We're getting money from it. AI is getting a little bit. Who did the heavy lifting, the real 80% of the value of what we're offering is AI, right? Who did that? It's people that spend hundreds of billions of dollars and brought the most smartest people in the world. So we're kind of taking somebody's thing and we're making a lot of money of it. So these big companies, they know that, but on the other hand, they're like, well, what should we tackle? We can't focus on a more vertical. I mean, this is bigger than a vertical. So I think they have a dilemma. I think the consumer is kind of where they're all landing on, make a consumer thing, and maybe with memory, you kind of make high switching costs. Because everybody's right now jumping between AI. There's no switching costs. So I think consumer with memory is probably one thing, but I feel like enterprise would be a massive game changer. Like employee, the whole thing that we have with the coach. If an AI company, but it's just going on a tangent here, but it was just an idea. I mean, maybe there are flaws in this, but if it can connect to the HR, to the entire system, understand the person, their journey, what they went through, and then allow the company not to need 7 layers of bureaucracy, but allow through a central intelligence system to say, hey, this guy's making good progress, promote him. No need for performance reviews, this guy has been warned multiple times, there's no track, fire him. Boom. Imagine that system, and imagine and imagine also the efficiencies it unlocks once all the data's in there and you can ask questions, and I think if they unlock that, that's huge, because an enterprise that can go from, executing at a certain rate to 10 times faster, think how much that's worth for them. A consumer, how much will you pay for AI ultimately? I mean, there is some sort of race and commodity, but over here, it's a high switching cost. You get deep. If someone can crack that for all companies in the world, think about how much money that is.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. It's very
like
interesting.
tie into your
framework and
Slack,
thing that-
tie into your email, tie into
Right.
everything, tie into
the
your
idea
notes.
is that basically like and this is exactly what we're going to be I think we're going to be one of the first companies to do this with our care coach. But the idea is that until now, technology is basically a tool that you use, right? And now it's like the intelligence was turned on in these tools. Basically,
Right.
maybe, in yeshiva, there's this concept called a chavrusa, right? Where you sit across a learning partner and you're learning
Right.
together, right? And so like, if you had, take the difference between that and then you, let's say, using a Kindle to read a book, okay? So I sit down with a Kindle, I read a book. I could be wasting time. Maybe I spend 60% of the time reading and 40% of the time spacing out or whatever, right? No one's going to know. The Kindle's not going to know, right? But if you're sitting with a learning partner and you're both required to finish this thing and you need each other to learn it, then that doesn't exist. Like you can't sit across the other person while the other person is trying to learn and you're just spacing out. So like if you like wake up the intelligence in the tools, the tech tools that you are using in order to, and now it's monitoring you. It's like, what the care coach is going to be doing is like, how are you being effective with your patients and helping you in case that it can help you and trying to make you a better person, but like a better care coordinator. But yeah, that's like a really interesting shift where it's like,
maybe
till now they were all dead pieces of dead tools that you basically can use or not use at your leisure. Now all of a sudden it's like you wake them up from the dead and they have intelligence. And now that tool that you're using is actually monitoring you. And it's like, how are you using me to do the job that you need to do?
And I think the right people that can unlock something like this are not the small isolated tools, because all they can do is like, oh, cool, you can add a summary, you can do this, you can do that. But the underlying communication platforms can do that, or the operating systems maybe. But like Gmail, Google, possibly, because you're using it but then you're also using Slack. So I don't know if it's like if one of those can be the solution for it, because you want someone that has majority of your conversations already, majority of the context. Probably Google has something like that, because they also have Google Sheets. You're storing probably a list of employees. Depends how big you are. So everything's scattered around. So everybody's trying to bring AI value to their thing, but you need like one thing that will say, no, we'll handle everything for you, or we'll integrate with the small gaps that exist. But that would be
I think what you need is a very clear, the tool has to have a clear objective of what you're trying to accomplish so that it can measure whether you're accomplishing it or not. That's first of all. And second of all, it has to be something that's used pretty much exclusively to get that task done. I think those are probably the two core components, which we have, which is why CareCo is going to work, because it's very clear what we're trying to accomplish, which is what we're, and also this is the platform you're using to accomplish it. So I think those are probably the two critical components that you need to get that done. No.
Yeah, understand the space that you're in and what you're trying to achieve.
Not just the space, like the individual person and what their goal is with using your platform, right?
You're saying an employee.
Yeah, like the end user. Otherwise, how are you judging them?
Yeah, no, for sure. It requires a lot of work, but I'm saying if someone could crack this, if someone can figure this out, it's I think it's huge. Easier said than done, obviously. But these guys, these AI companies, look what they've done. They built AI. So I think this is if they can crack into the enterprise and that level, like employee management, employee efficiency, I think that'll be huge. Like you can probably cut through a lot of layers of bureaucracy through it, which opens up efficiency gains. Like what we're talking about, you can have a bunch of startups. You can have a company that's made up of a bunch of startups in terms of the way the efficiency works, but at the same time, be a big company that's consistent and cohesive as a mission and I think that would be.
All right. Well, I know Shlomo's got to run in just a little bit. So coming up, I want to talk about this just a little bit today, but we could push it to next, but kind of a teaser for next time. We are now launching. We're heavy on the offense now at CareCo. We're launching ambient listening for folks that do telephonic care coordination, but they also do in person. And so you want all the intelligence and data under one roof. So examples of that would be folks that are doing chronic care management in a nursing home in person. It will be home health, hospice nurses, and there's a lot of where you have like a core kind of call center that does a lot of the coordinating, but then you have folks on the ground talking to patients. So this is gonna be very powerful for those use cases. Bring everything under one roof. And then we're also launching texting and video over the next few months. So we're starting those now, and pretty excited about those projects. Kind of finish out our feature set to be one solid communication platform with your patients in whichever way, in person, text, telephone, and video. and it's gonna be an exciting couple
It'll be
months.
one solution for all your communication, and then we do that concept where we have all the intelligence about your communication. You can provide tremendous value through AI. So that's very strategic and very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty excited
Really
about that.
exciting.
Yeah.
I also listened to the
I know. I
Acquired-
want to ask you about the Acquired podcast. What time is it?
No, we got 10 minutes,
We
right?
have we have a couple minutes. Okay. What'd you learn on the Acquired pod about Epic?
About Epic, the Epic Acquire podcast. First of all, these guys do a very nice job. I mean, it's 3 hours. You look at it like 3 hours, 4 hours.
4 hours.
It's like, where am I going to find out 4 hours to listen to? But first of all, the Acquire podcast, really nice job. The way they do it is they say it in a story where each guy, comes in and takes over the other guy. I'm saying they have two podcasters, and they do it in their own style. They say the story from the way they discovered. They usually work chronologically, so they'll start and they'll say, this and this person grew up in this town, and then they'll take it from there.
And they do a lot of research. Like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of
tremendous
heavy
research. Right.
research, which is cool.
Yeah, so you learn a lot, but it's also set in a story. It's not condensed, quick, compressed. If you need like the data fast, so you could call it boring, but it's in terms of a story, it's very nice the way they describe it. What I learned from that, first of all, you can't not admire Judy Faulkner. I think that's her name.
Faulkner, yeah.
Faulkner, after you hear the story and how she her, from when she started, her vision and just the consistency, and 40 years it took her to build this thing, and also realizing that Epic offers tremendous value to the industry. I mean, the reason why they succeeded was because they were actually very good. They were the only ones that didn't really have failed implementations because they offer the whole set of solutions. It's not like we're doing the EMR and then you have to figure out your billing system. It's like, no, it's all here, and there's no reason why it's not going to work because it's all connected. We're giving you the whole solution. So that was probably tremendous for a lot of hospitals. I mean, they are the only ones that do it in that way, probably. So they have probably some sort of monopolistic element to it. But the podcasters actually don't think that they're charging as much as they could if they wanted to squeeze out as much as they can.
Wow.
So that's a good sign. They're acting in very good faith as well while they have that opportunity.
They've never lost a single client.
They did lose one client on the podcast, they say, but then they came back 2 months later or something. So,
and I will say,
there's high switching costs, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah, very high switching costs and very painful switching costs.
Right.
But I've interacted personally with quite a few executives at Epic, and I did get that sense, all good people, genuine people, people have this thing about Epic, they're this big bad monster.
Right.
My personal experience with anyone that I've dealt with at Epic has been they're all good people.
Yeah, and the culture that they built, it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating to learn about how they did it. It was very intentional. It wasn't like a company that just grew and was looking for money. There was a mission behind it, and they were very true to their mission. At some point, when they had the big Kaiser acquisition offer, Judith came back and said Kaiser was entertaining doing one for billing and one for EMR, and they said, listen, regardless of if you choose us or the other one, Cerner, I don't agree that you should do it this way because it's wrong for you. So pushing back on that, even though she had both, she was the only one that had both. So that was kind of
what do you mean she had both?
Talking her own book. No, she was the only one that was able to offer both together.
Oh.
But she was saying, that's a wrong thing. And she was right because most times it fails on that point. But also very, very strategic. I think she called out Kaiser. Kaiser probably knew that they wanted to go with Epic.
Right.
But they went to Cerner and said, what can we get equity?
Right, they want equity.
So then Cerner said, sure, we'll give you equity. I don't know, some big 10% or something. And then they came back to Epic and they said, Cerner gave us equity. Will you give us 2? Kind of playing the thing. And I'm thinking she's probably very smart. And she realized okay, why did you go to them first and coming to us? You want to use that. You went to them because they need you more than because they're the underdog here, probably. So they'll agree to anything. So then you use that to come back to us because you really know you want us. And she's like, no, we're not doing any equity. But maybe it's just from pure principles. I mean, she's a very principled person. So anyways, very fascinating.
And the bottom line is that they went with Epic.
They went with Epic, right? So that's very cool. I think something very interesting about the podcast is I heard at least on this one where at the end they talk about the 7 powers. It's a book about how do companies become durable and have built moats, in language that we know. And it boils it down to 7 powers. 7 powers that a company can have to kind of have those things where competitors have strong barriers to compete with you, like switching costs, scaling costs, branding. What are the other ones? There's 7 stuff. So they kind of take the company that they talk about at the end and they analyze it from that perspective. Okay, which ones do they have? And they kind of identify that Epic has probably 4 or 5 of them. Not sure that all that is accurate, but it's very interesting. Like from that perspective, I think thinking from that framework is super, super important for a company to be durable. Like so switching costs, something that they talked about. Branding, obviously Epic has branding. Scaling economics, they say that they have scaling economics because they built all their software on their own. I guess that's questionable if that's considered scale economic. Probably it is. Also network effects. Network effect is basically where the bigger you are, the more valuable you are. So it's a compounding thing where, so basically the more people you have, the more you think about like a WhatsApp. Not WhatsApp is a network effect because the more people are on WhatsApp, the more of a value proposition is for me to want to join WhatsApp because I have more people there.
Yep.
So they're saying because of the interoperability that they have with these different, if you have an Epic system and we have an Epic system,
it's very easy.
You can share the record, the patient record. So very, very interesting podcast.
Like they have now with Cosmos where you could like opt into things where like, okay, if you turn on your data, you get access to everyone else's data. It's like this, like,
and they do tap into one of the things that we talked about where because of HIPAA, we're trying very much to, so in general in the industry, there's top down and bottoms up sales, building approach. Like what's the mindset? Are you targeting the user to have a great user experience and then they start using it and then they come to their bosses and say, hey, I must have this software because it's just amazing, which it could work in certain places, or from the top down from the executive where you make a very compelling product and that's like kind of the Microsoft versus the Slack approach, right? Slack created a great product people started using on their own. And then people said, hey, we're using this anyways. Can you just pay for it? And that's what they paid for because it was a great product.
Right.
Microsoft is the other approach. Microsoft comes to the executive and they say, here, they give them a big sheet of all the features and like, here, you have everything in one. It replaces all your other products. Feature to feature, we can check it off. But the quality, the user experience is not there. But for the executive, it's a compelling pitch. So generally, there's like 2 ways how to enter a thing. And we prefer to go bottoms up because we feel we want to build a good product. We care about the user experience. We want people to sing our praises, and then obviously, ultimately, the money will follow. So we're not thinking from the top down, but we have the HIPAA thing. Like bottom up for us would mean give CareCo to anybody, let them experience it, because we know once someone experiences CareCo, they're not going back, right? A care coordinator that does that, once they experience it, they're not going back. So why not offer CareCo to all the care coordinators? We have one big blocker, HIPAA. HIPAA, they cannot sign a HIPAA. They're the owner of the business, whoever's responsible, or the chief security officer needs to sign HIPAA with us, needs to sign a BAA with us and say, okay, this is fine from a HIPAA perspective that we can release patient information.
Right.
So that creates a massive barrier. So we need to kind of play both sides because we are obsessed about the customer experience, but also we need approval from the top. So they talk about that with Epic and the industry in general. They also talk about how Epic being like the solution for everything was a massive value prop for their customers. And I think even though we're not building an Epic, but I think us building like a full solution with all the pieces needed is a huge value prop that compounds over time and makes it hard to compete with.
Yeah.
There's actually another thing I wanted to touch on unless you wanted to talk about something. You talked about about trying with the customer, trying to work with a customer instead of just like building it in your house, like coming with a great idea and then finding out the market doesn't exactly want your product. It's interesting because I came across this, Aristotle, it was considered like he's known in history as like one of the smartest thinkers, wrote a lot. And he was a polymath, like he was science, medicine, I think, a lot of philosophy. What? Economics, right. I mean, everything was much more, there's not a lot more information, so it's easy to deal with everything. But one of the interesting things is that as smart as he was, if you look at him and how he did things, there's one massive flaw in the things that he did. That, in retrospect, it seems so stupid. But he was not a stupid person. He was like one of the smartest people alive in probably his whole generation or a few generations. But there's one thing. He came up with a lot of theories about the universe, about the galaxies or whatnot. And he never bothered measuring anything or testing anything. So there's something interesting that he did where he He said in his opinion, everything, the heavier something weighed, the faster it would fall. That's what
never measured that.
He never measured that. And then, I don't know how many, maybe 100 or 200 years later, this guy Galileo decided to actually do an experiment. So he rolled different things down of different rocks of different sizes, and he saw that everything kind of came down at the same time. So boom, debunked. So it's crazy because now you think, if you have something, just verify it with the reality of the world. So, I mean, it's a mindset that science, it's very obvious today with the scientific method, but I'm saying you can be an Aristotle, you can be a genius, but you're sitting in your room and you never bothered trying it out. Don't be Aristotle.
Right.
Just be practical. Just try to
Be Galileo.
measure things. Be Galileo. People know more about Aristotle than Galileo, probably. So,
right. I think the only reason why anyone knows about Galileo is from that song, from the
Galileo Galilei.
No.
Queen.
Yes.
The Queen song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, and I think that's a different one. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, quite fascinating. This was fun.
Yeah,
next
good.
time.
Yeah.
I
Cheers.
gotcha.